Corn is sweet, delicious, and if you add some butter, it's borderline addictive and naturally will be welcome at most any dinner table or on your next neighborhood cookout. Now, there really isn't a wrong way to prepare it, but there might be a better way, and that way is going to be the way of the streets. The Mexican streets. So let's dive into some Mexican street corn, also known as elote. Okay, so while obviously that B-roll is pretty appetizing, we need to cover our ingredients, and what I will assume is, no surprise to anybody, you're going to want to start out by grabbing some corn. In my case, about 4 ears of corn will do. Next, you'll want to grab some mayo, which we're going to use to add some creaminess and to act as a binder for some of our other delicious ingredients, which I will be covering shortly. You'll also want a clove or two of fresh garlic, as well as some fresh lime and a hit of basil. Fresh basil, of course, and if basil isn't your thing, cilantro will work quite nicely. Next, you'll need about 200 grams of cotija cheese, which is a less salty and slightly creamier version of Greek feta, which you're all familiar with. I know it might sound a little weird, but trust me, it is going to be delicious. Now, you might have noticed we're missing some flavor here, so it's time to grab your spices, which I have laid out neatly on our plate for your viewing pleasure. Now, as you can see, I've got roughly 1 teaspoon of chipotle powder, about 2 teaspoons of paprika, which you can use smoked or not, 1 teaspoon of ancho powder, and about 1 teaspoon of cayenne for a nice hit of spice. Now, you can of course add more or less, or even swap out spices depending on what you might like or what you might have kicking around the kitchen. And that's it. That's all the ingredients you're going to need to make this amazing Mexican street corn, so let's get to the prep. So to start, grab yourself a bowl and transfer all your spices in there and make yourself a nice mix. And as you're doing this, ponder why the hell you didn't get a bigger bowl and why you're using your fingers. Once you've determined that and all the spices in said bowl, go ahead and grab yourself a spoon and give this a quick mix. This little spice blend is going to add a ton of smoky, spicy flavor to our corn. Speaking of our corn, let's grab ourselves a cookie sheet, which we've now covered with some aluminum foil, and go ahead and put our corn directly on there. You're then going to add about 1 to 2 teaspoons of a neutral oil just to act as a binder for the spices. So grab your trusty sauce brush and go ahead and brush out all that oil across the corn before adding some basic seasoning, which is going to be some salt and some pepper. With that done, it's time to add our spice blend, so go ahead and grab a good pinch of that and just pour it over top. Now obviously you're going to want to get all sides of your corn seasoned here, so go ahead and roll these over and continue the process. And don't be afraid to be fairly liberal with your seasoning here because extra flavor is going to help us out. Once thoroughly coated, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. You can see how the oil is helping that spice bind, and it's going to keep everything in place when we hit the barbecue. But with that done, let's move this to the side because we've got to prep our mayo. So to start, just go ahead and grab yourself a lime, which you're going to cut in half. Well, ain't that the prettiest lime you've ever seen? Anyways, go ahead and grab yourself a bowl, and then squeeze in about 3/4 of a cup of mayo. To that, you're going to add about 1 teaspoon of our spice blend, before squeezing in the juice of half of your very pretty lime. Next, grab your garlic and your garlic press and, well, press your garlic into your mayonnaise mix. Then you're going to grab your basil, give it a quick roll, and chop this up rather finely, before showing off your work to the camera. Now you might be wondering what this interruption is for. It's a PSA so that people can know that even when you're making something as basic as corn, you can still somehow magically cut your thumb, so yeah, stay safe out there. With your thumb freshly bandaged, go ahead and dump in the rest of your basil before grabbing your bluest of whisks and giving this a quick whisk. Once this is all incorporated, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. And that's our mayo done, so let's move this to the side because we have to get our cheese ready. So on a plate or small casserole, go ahead and break up about 100 grams of your cotija cheese. Now I do recommend throwing this into a blender because this actually took a lot longer to break up with my hands than I would have expected. So yeah, if you're looking for a finer and more consistent product, throw this in a blender. It'll take a lot less time and it'll just, well, be more consistent. Like seriously, this took me like 5 minutes. Anyways, you should have something at the end that looks something like this, kind of a fine granular cheese powder that we're going to use to cover our corn in. Alright, so with our cheese prep, we are basically good to go. So let's move this to the side because we need to now get ourselves on the grill. So yes, the grill is already on at about 425 to 450 degrees. All we gotta do is cook the corn for about 10 or 15 minutes and really get a nice char on it. Now guys, I will stress that you should make sure you get your barbecue up to temp, make sure it's nice and hot, and really make sure that corn gets a nice, beautiful char. So once everything is ready, go ahead and put all of your corn down. Then it's simply a matter of getting good color on these and then just rotating them every 5 or 6 minutes. So it's been about 5 or 6 minutes. You can see we've got some really nice color, and we're just gonna start rolling all of these over to make sure we get every side. Now this process means you're gonna need to keep an eye on things here, so you can't just walk away for 30 minutes, but it's a pretty painless process. You should be able to roll these over every 3 to 5 minutes, and you should have a product that looks a little bit like this. You can see we've got a nice, beautiful char, some caramelization, and just some really awesome colors. But we don't have time to admire our work because we need to coat these in our mayo. So grab your bowl of mayo, grab your brush, and go ahead and spread the mayo over each piece of corn. Now, one thing to be mindful here is if the corn is quite hot, the mayo will melt quite a lot and you'll need more of it. If you let it cool down a little bit more, you'll end up with a better overall product, but this is more or less what you should have. And with the first piece done, you're just gonna need to repeat this for as many pieces of corn that you actually have. Again, as the corn cools down, the mayo is gonna adhere more readily to the corn and it's not gonna melt, and you'll just have a better, more even coating for your cotija cheese to stick to. Anyways, with the final touches of mayo on your final piece of corn, it is finally time to start adding our cheese. And this process is going to be pretty painless. We're just going to grab our corn and start spooning on some of the cheese. Now, I don't recommend rolling this directly into the cheese because it is going to make clumps and everything is going to stick, and it's just a little bit easier if you just spoon it over and press it down. In any case, once you've thoroughly coated your corn, you should have something that looks like this. There's an amazing contrast between the yellow and the charred bits of the corn with that white cheese, and yeah, basically we're just gonna repeat this process 3 more times or until you're done all the corn that you've decided to make, and that'll basically be the end of it. Well, end is maybe not the right word because we actually have to do one more thing, and that is going to be to add some more of our spice blend. This is going to give it an extra little pop of color and a little bit of that flavor, and really just kind of brings everything together. Now this thing is looking good, it looks delicious, and all we have to do now is plate it up. So grab your nearest plate or bowl or dish, and go ahead and drop in your Mexican street corn. Now you could top this with some cilantro, some more basil, or some lime, but honestly, this has everything I want. I mean, just look at this, guys. It's got amazing contrast and color. You can see the char from the grill, the nice colors we're getting from our spices, and of course, the really vibrant yellow from the corn itself. Now, of course, before we wrap up this video, I want to do a couple things, and that's going to be to taste test our final product, which I gotta say is surprisingly good. You got the sweetness from the corn, you get some of that nice char, you get some wonderful smokiness from our little spice blend, as well as a little bit of spice, but that creaminess and saltiness you get from the cotija cheese is really what brings us up to a next level. I highly recommend you guys give this a shot the next time you decide to fire up the grill. Now, of course, guys, like every other video, I'm gonna let you know exactly how much time and how much money this is going to set you back. Now, this whole thing only took me about 23 minutes to put together, and I wasted time trying to get that cotija cheese broken down by hand. So if you use a blender, you will be even faster, I promise you. It is that quick and that simple. Now, when it comes to cost, obviously corn is not particularly expensive. Where the cost really kind of gets pumped up a bit is going to be with the cotija cheese. But that being said, this will only set you back about $1.75 to about $1.85, which is pretty goddamn good. Oh, and speaking of things that are good, don't forget to grab yourself a beverage for all your hard work. And since you've got a bit of lime kicking around, you may as well add that in too. Cheers, folks. And there you go, guys. Our Mexican street corn is done. It's super simple and super delicious, and I really encourage you to try it. Anyways, that'll do it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching until the end of this video, and as always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. We will see you in the next one.